Good morning. I know this has been an incredibly difficult start to the school year for students who've already experienced too many disruptions in their educational journeys. It has also been challenging for teachers who we all know want to be in the classroom doing what they love. And parents, I know that you've been juggling more than usual, and I hope that going forward your days are going to be less challenging. But most importantly, we've seen how this strike has impacted our students. And we know from the COVID-19 pandemic how quickly and severely learning loss can impact children when they're not in the classroom. That is why we are announcing today the introduction of Bill 2, the Back to School Act. Our intention is to pass this legislation immediately and end the strike by the Alberta Teachers Association. My expectation is that students and teachers will be back in the classroom on Wednesday. Minister Nate Horner and Minister Mickey Amery will provide details about the legislation, and then Minister Nicolaides will announce further funding and policy changes that we will begin to implement immediately once classes resume. The end of the strike does not bring an end to the teachers' concerns raised through the bargaining process, and we are addressing those concerns head on. This means immediately collecting and publicly reporting on class size and composition. Numbers and data help provide clarity, and this information will guide government's immediate and future policy, funding, and decision-making. But data alone is not enough. We know that as a government, we need to use that data to understand which classrooms need more resources, and we need to know that we need to provide that funding to support these specific classrooms. So I'm announcing today that we will be immediately forming a class size and complexity task force, and we are sincerely hoping that the teachers and the education assistants will also play a very large role in this. The task force will chart a path in 3 key areas. First, before the end of November, using the data collected, additional funding will be provided to school boards to support new teachers and new education assistants hiring targets. This will help to get more teachers in the classroom as quickly as possible. As well, $100 million per year for the next 3 years will be directed to hire more education assistants. We are committed to hiring at least an additional 3,000 new teachers and 1,500 more educational assistants over the next 3 years in the schools and the classrooms that need them the most. And we're investing about $8.6 billion to build 130 new and modernized schools. Together, these investments will make a significant difference in reducing class sizes. Second, in response to concerns about classroom complexity, in June, an action team comprised of trustees, school division administrators, teachers, and educational assistants began looking at how to reduce disruptions in the classroom and how to strengthen supports for students and educators. This team's report will be released in November, and the Ministry of Education and Childcare will immediately begin implementing the recommendations. And third, we will also be working with education stakeholders, including school boards and teachers, education assistants, and parents, and we'll be replacing the 20-year-old standards for special education with a new inclusive education policy framework. These commitments to improving the education system are immediate, wide-ranging, and tangible, and they help to address many of the challenges that teachers face on a daily basis. Alberta has a long and proud history of having a world-class education system, and going forward, I know that tradition will continue. Minister Horner will now share details with you about the legislation.
Thank you, Premier. Today we are introducing Bill 2, the Back to School Act. This legislation ensures that no further harm is done to Alberta's students and there is an immediate end to the strike. It also invokes the notwithstanding clause to help ensure stability for the school system moving forward. Bill 2 also sets fair and reasonable terms for a new collective agreement for our teachers. Invoking the notwithstanding clause is a serious decision and one this government does not take lightly, but it is necessary. Students need to be back in the classroom. Negotiations with the union have gone on for 18 months. We have respected the bargaining process and made every effort to reach a fair and responsible settlement. Unfortunately, students have been the ones paying the price for the ATA strike. Immediate action is now required to protect them and restore stability to Alberta's education system. We were prepared to accept the March 2025 mediator's recommendation, which the ATA endorsed, but their members later rejected. We were also prepared to accept the September 2025 Memorandum of Agreement, which was based on an ATA proposal. Once again, teachers rejected that deal. The ATA's latest offer went too far. It would have imposed rigid classroom size and complexity limits that strip school boards of the ability to manage their schools effectively. Worse, it would have nearly doubled the total cost of the September agreement, adding an additional $2 billion obligation for Alberta taxpayers. Even after the teachers rejected 2 of their union's endorsed settlements, government offered enhanced mediation to end the strike, get teachers and students back to class, and continue addressing classroom pressures. The ATA refused to return to the table and stood by their impossible, inflexible offer. Bill 2 enacts the Memorandum of Agreement reached in late September when the Teachers Employer Bargaining Association accepted the proposal the ATA put on the table. It's a generous settlement that includes a 12% salary increase over 4 years, an additional market adjustment that improves the pay of 95% of teachers up to 17%, and funds the hiring of 3,000 new teachers to reduce class sizes and strengthen student learning. It provides a commitment to hire 1,500 additional EAs and provides COVID shots to teachers as requested by the ATA. The legislation also provides that no formal local bargaining will occur during the life of this agreement from September 1st, 2024 to August 31st, 2028. This pause on local bargaining is necessary to prevent new strikes over local issues and to ensure that students and parents are not disrupted again for the entirety of the agreement. Ordinarily, local bargaining would follow central negotiations to address things like professional development, tuition reimbursement, job postings, and allowances. But now the focus must remain on stability, not further disruption. This legislation will prevent strikes at 2 levels, general and local, protecting our kids from additional strikes across 61 other jurisdictions. With this move, local discussions can continue, but no strike or lockouts are guaranteed to ensure stability for parents and our kids. The legislation also includes enforcement provisions through the Alberta Labour Relations Board with penalties of up to $500 a day for individuals participating in illegal strike action and up to $500,000 a day for organizations. Students, parents, and teachers all deserve stability. The time for that stability is now. Bill 2 provides a clear, responsible path forward, one that puts Alberta students first and restores certainty to classrooms across the province. Now, Minister Amory will provide additional details on the notwithstanding clause. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Horner. Our government has said that we are prepared to use every legal and constitutional tool available to get students back into our classrooms. The Premier has made it very clear. This strike has caused irreparable harm to students. That is why we'll be invoking the notwithstanding clause in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Alberta Bill of Rights, and the Alberta Human Rights Act. We believe that this is a necessary measure to end the undue hardship caused by the teachers' strike. It will remove the uncertainty a court case could create. But most importantly, using the notwithstanding clause in this case preserves the sovereignty of the legislature to act in the public interest. And we believe that it is in the public interest that students return to the classrooms as soon as possible. We're approaching this from the lens of protecting and supporting our students. Each day that our schools are closed, students are losing critical support and time in the classroom. That's why we're doing this, to prioritize the learning and well-being of our students. The notwithstanding clause is integral to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and a vital provincial constitutional right. It is not just open to the legislature to take this step, but rather a moral imperative. We must protect Alberta's children from a prolonged and unnecessary delay in their education. We will not apologize for putting children first. Thank you. I'd like to invite Minister Nicolaides to conclude.
you, Premier, Minister Horner, Minister Amory. Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. The past few weeks have been hard. Students have missed their classrooms, teachers have missed their students, and families have carried extra weight. School is more than just a building. It's a place where children learn, grow, and feel safe. When that's taken away, it affects everyone. Schools across Alberta, as the Premier noted, will reopen on Wednesday, October 29th. This is a fresh start, a chance to move forward together. Our goal is simple: to help students feel supported and help teachers feel safe and ready. Teachers are telling us that classrooms are more complex than ever. We hear them and we're ready to act. Today, I'll share more details about what we're doing to support teachers, students, and families, and how we'll keep building from here. Making classrooms safer and more supportive is my top priority. No teacher should ever feel unsafe at work. No student should go without the help that they need. Earlier this year, I created the Aggression and Complexity in Schools Action Team. They've written a draft report with ideas to help. I've received it, and once it's finalized, we'll use it to help guide our next steps. We'll publish the report in November, and after that, we'll form a new task force, as the Premier mentioned, to put the ideas into action. We'll also begin updating the 2004 standards for special education to ensure that every student can receive the support that they need. Right away, we will work with school boards to collect better data. We want to understand class sizes and student needs more clearly. This will help us find where support is needed most. We will do this together with teachers, school leaders, and families. As well, we're backing our plan with real support. As the Premier noted, we've committed $300 million over 3 years to help school boards hire more educational assistants and complete more student assessments. This will mean that at least 1,500 new educational assistants will be in our classrooms. More help, of course, will mean more support. This is on top of the $1.6 billion we've invested through Budget 25 for students with specialized learning needs. We're also investing $1.1 billion to hire over 4,000 teachers and educational assistants to meet growing demand, and we're putting $8.6 billion into building and renovating 130 schools across our province. This will help reduce class sizes and give students better spaces to learn. And I want to talk for a moment about the impact this strike has had on our kids. More than 700,000 students have been affected. That's a huge number. And behind every number is a child who's missed their teacher, who's missed their friends, and missed their routine. Some students have lost momentum. Some are feeling anxious. Some are falling behind. For kids with special needs, this disruption was even harder. Parents have done their best. Many scrambled to find help. Some had to take time off work. Others worried about their children's progress. Research shows how serious these impacts can be. A study by economist Michael Baker at the University of Toronto looked at teacher strikes in Ontario between 1998 and 2005. He found that long strikes, those lasting 10 days or more, lead to clear drops in student learning, especially in math. In some cases, students lost nearly a third of a year's progress. Another Ontario study by David Johnson at Wilfrid Laurier University found that strikes and work to rule campaigns hit hardest in schools where students already face challenges. Kids in grades 3 and 6 at disadvantaged schools saw large drops in reading and math scores across the strike years. These findings matter. They show us that when schools close, students lose more than just time. They lose learning, confidence, and opportunity. That's why our work now is so important. We must help students catch up, feel supported, and thrive again. I believe in Alberta's teachers. I believe in our students, and I believe in what we can do together. We're investing in education because we care, but we know money alone is not enough. We need teamwork, trust, and action. In closing, to Alberta's teachers, I want to say thank you. You've shown strength, patience, and heart. And we're with you, and we're ready to work beside you to build classrooms where every child can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now enter the media QA for the press conference. A reminder to media online and in person that this press conference is under embargo. That includes any QA related to the remarks or to Bill 2, and that embargo won't lift until the bill is tabled later today. We'll be taking one question, one follow-up. Please state your name and outlet before asking your question. We'll start off here in the room. If I can just see a show of hand for questions. We'll go to Graham, then we'll go to Morgan, and then Emmanuel.
Premier, at Toronto Star. Notwithstanding clause, contentious issue. Of course, the federal government has filed a submission to the Supreme Court because it feels that provinces are using notwithstanding clause as a preemptive strike before any sort of court decisions. You're doing here. So I was wondering, is this not what you're doing? Is not just a message to the teachers to prevent them from striking? Is it also a message to the federal government when it comes to the use of notwithstanding clause?
Well, I would point out somebody sent me some history in 1983 when Peter Lougheed was doing back-to-work legislation. He was quoted saying that if a right to strike was determined that would prevent him from doing that, he would convene the legislature and use the notwithstanding clause. So this was exactly the kind of circumstance, I believe, that Peter Lougheed had in mind when he argued so hard on behalf of provinces to include the notwithstanding clause. Notwithstanding clause is part of our Constitution. And part of the reason why it's there is that sometimes there are a lot of different interests that have to be mediated, and those interests have to be mediated by elected politicians. So I would say that this is a very unique case. Certainly not, I don't think anyone should take that this would be a general application. If you look at what the finance minister had to say, the uniqueness of this is that there's two potentials for strike, not only at the general provincial table, but also at the local table. And if there are strikes that are allowed at 61 different school boards, that does not give the certainty that we need. So this is I don't believe any other bargaining table is in that circumstance. I don't think it has that kind of hybrid approach. We thought very hard about what our options would be, and that was the reason, is that this is a very unique case, and I don't think people should indicate any broader type of approach when it comes to labor action on this. Did you want to comment, Minister, or did I cover that?
I think you covered it pretty well, Premier.
Anybody else?
Did you want to comment, or are you good? Okay.
You're turning down a chance to talk. Premier, again on notwithstanding clause, you've got the labor movement, Gil McGowan, AFL, has said if you do bring in a notwithstanding clause, there'll be an unprecedented reaction from the labor movement, potentially a general strike. Are you making any sort of plans to deal with that? What's your reaction to that? And is there any sort of plans by the government to handle what could be a general strike?
Well, I would hope not. I mean, I think that I've explained why this is a very unique situation we find ourselves in. This is a unique strike. We've never had 51,000 workers off the job at the same time. We've never had every school, public, Catholic, and Francophone, off for 3 weeks. We've never had the circumstances that we faced in the last 3 years of 80,000 new students being added. We've never had the complexity that we have in classrooms, which require not just teachers at the table, but it also requires education assistants at the table and trustees and superintendents. That's why we want to address the issues that came up during the strike. We want to just address them in a different way, a more nuanced way, in a more directed way. That's what we're going to do.
But answer the question, though, it could be a general strike.
Well, I hope not. I hope not. Again, I would hope that the labor union would see. The labor unions would see that this is a very specific action we're taking in this specific instance, because we've got two different tables where there could potentially be disruptive strikes, and we think kids have been disrupted enough. So I don't think people should draw some sort of general application that this is the approach that we would take in every instance of labor action. I think we've demonstrated that we defend the right to strike. Actions have gotten a very rapid response from government. We maintained hope all the way up to this weekend that we'd be able to get back to the table in mediation, and it was rejected by the ATA. So that's the situation we find ourselves in, and I hope that the labor unions don't do that.
Graham, we're going to have to go to our next question here. That's three already. Morgan, can you go ahead with your question?
Did you want to talk about the...
Sorry,
Sure.
I hadn't answered the question.
Well, I would say this, Graham. No other unions are in a legal position to strike currently. And so if they're proposing wildcat illegal strike action, you know, there's severe consequences at the Labor Relations Board for those actions. As the Premier said, I think this is a very unique circumstance. If And as she said, we've shown a willingness to bargain and achieve tough negotiated deals. We did that with UNIT. We did that with AUPE, with APS. We used enhanced mediation there as another tool. So there's other tools at the disposal. I would expect that they would be used in an impasse with those other unions. This is very specific to this one for all the reasons the Premier stated.
Thanks, Graham, and we'll go to Morgan next.
And so I'll get you to stay up there and then probably for you as well, Premier. So this now becoming a legislative collective agreement, one that 90% of teachers voted down. Is this kicking the can down the road to an argument that they will still have in 2028? Like, are you hoping that we're in a better fiscal position by then to revisit? Like, what are you going to do when the,
Well, I think
like, they don't like the agreement?
as the education minister, where is he, stated, you know, a lot of the work begins today. So I think we're going to show teachers that we heard them loud and clear, and we're going to work on a bunch of different avenues to address classroom size and complexity. Largely, we agree about the challenge. We're disagreeing about how to fix it and the speed at which we can. When it comes to the potential for that down the road, I guess we both have something to prove to one another. You know, I don't think coming in at the end of over a year of bargaining with a very inflexible position that basically doubled the deal that was on the table left us in a position where we were going to negotiate this. So I think maybe both of us need to think about that before we get to 2028. But we're prepared to show them that we're serious about making improvements in the classroom.
Did you want to add anything? Okay. And then I think Minister Nicolaides, for you, province out of this recall legislation, we've seen a lot of civic politicians facing this, and now you're also facing that recall petition. What do you make of that, and what does that say to you about how things have gone under your file?
Well, I'm very proud of the things that we've accomplished during my time as minister. Of course, we've been able to increase funding supports for PUF to create a second entry date to help students receive more support. We've moved away from a 3-year weighted moving average to a 2-year model. We've also increased funding to many of our educational grants, including First Nations, Métis Inuit grants, specialized learning support grants, and as well managed, of course, to develop the largest school capital build in Alberta history. So I'm very proud of those efforts. I know, of course, that people may always have a degree of dissatisfaction, and they're welcome to voice their concerns.
Thanks, Morgan. Can I see another quick show of hands as well? We'll go to Emmanuel, then we'll go to Catherine, then we'll go to the phones.
Question for the Premier. Your government could have ordered back to work the teachers. They could have sent them to binding arbitration. Why did you choose to go down this path and to invoke what is the nuclear option of the Constitution, the notwithstanding clause?
Well, I wouldn't describe it that way. I mean, we've been watching a number of different actions, and I think the ministers and I have been reading a number of different judgments over the course of the last weekend. You'll note that in the Canada Post dispute, that the federal minister did not order binding arbitration. He actually ordered a mediator to look at the two sides to see if they were close to an agreement. And so, and they just sided with the federal government on that. So I think that gives a pretty clear understanding that there's more than one option to be able to settle a dispute. And I think to the minister's point, in the 11th hour, rather than come closer to us in an agreement, they were further apart than ever, proposing an additional hasty $2 billion additional proposal. That demonstrated to me that if we were going further apart rather than closer together, that demonstrated to me and I think to the ministers that a settlement was unlikely. We kept trying. We invited them back to enhanced mediation. They refused, and we kept on trying until today. And so being that we don't have an agreement to have a second stab with a mediator, this we think is going to be able to address the issues in the targeted and dedicated way, requiring all of the input from all of the different stakeholders who are going to be impacted. There's lots of ways to be able to address class size. First thing is transparency. Let's find out where the classes are. Second thing is let's find out how many complex kids are in those classrooms, and then let's engineer a solution at each school board and each school. That's the kind of dedicated work that we're going to start immediately, and we really hope that both the ATA and CUPE will work with us on identifying people who can help us with that.
And the bill you're introducing today, which is invoking the notwithstanding clause, will be fast-tracked through the House using time allocation. All of that to impose an agreement that was rejected by 90% of the teachers. So what is the democratic legitimacy of this deal, of this bill?
I'll let the minister talk about the pace because he's also our House leader. But I would say that the mechanics of the wage settlement is very fair. As I mentioned before when I've been asked about this, the new pay grid will allow for teachers to start at $70,000, going all the way up to $119,000, depending on the number of years of service and education. And after provincial taxes, it will make them the highest paid teachers in Western Canada by a lot, by thousands of dollars. So we think that there isn't that big a dispute, quite frankly, around the issue of the wage grid. We also agreed when they put on the table the commitment to 3,000 teachers and 1,500 education assistants. In fact, by working to identify the classrooms that need them the most, we think we're going to be able to make great progress in that. So we don't think that that is the stumbling block. The issue is an arbitrary cap policy that has failed in the past. I mean, we had these kinds of classroom caps before. The NDP spent $2 billion trying to reduce class size, and the Auditor General found that not only did we not know where the money went, class sizes increased over that period. So these kinds of arbitrary objectives aren't what is needed. We have 158 schools that are over capacity, if you look at the utilization reports. And we've got about 1,000 schools that are quite dramatically under capacity. Some of them are located right near each other. Maybe one of the solutions is busing kids 5 or 10 minutes away to a nearby school. You don't solve that problem by just having an arbitrary cap put in place. You solve that problem by figuring out where the problems are and maybe changing the busing. There are some schools as well where they have more administrators than education assistants. Maybe we need to change that balance. Maybe we actually need to hire more education assistants in those classrooms. And there are some classrooms that are very complex that don't even have any education assistants or ELL learning specialists. So we're going to hold our school boards to account. We have delegated this authority to them in the past. We're disappointed that with the resources we've given them, they haven't made the funding allocations that have addressed these problems. So we're going to help them. We're going to be at the table with them, and we're going to address them school by school and classroom by classroom so that we can make some real impact.
Thanks, Manuel. We'll go to
Minister,
Catherine.
was called upon to answer during the-
Sure. The speed.
So why are you forcing this legislation through by limiting the debate time on such an important bill?
Well, look, again, as I said in my earlier comments, we're looking at this from the lens of our students, and we need the students back in school full stop as quickly as possible. Premier has articulated the reasons why we think that this is a fair deal. We've come to an MOU with the ATA on a number of occasions that were ultimately not endorsed by their members. But keep in mind that the government's bargaining agent and the ATA understood that to be a good agreement and came forward and presented it to their members and they were ultimately rejected. We need something that'll get our students back to class as quickly as possible. And that's exactly why through our team of House leaders tonight and our government caucus and cabinet, we will be moving this through the legislature as quickly as possible. Now we plan to work throughout the night if we need to get it passed so that we can have our students back to class as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Manuel. We'll go to, go ahead, Minister.
When it comes to the fact that we're going to expedite this, and that's the plan today, you know, I was asked repeatedly by the media over the last few weeks, some that are in this room, well, why aren't you going back to session early? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? We respected the teachers' right to strike, but we said that once it passes that bar of irreparable harm, which we think that it obviously has now that it's the longest strike action in educational history, that has been met. And so the only way we're going to have kids back in school on Wednesday is to get it through the House tonight. And that's what we're going to do.
Thanks, Minister. We'll go to Catherine now, and then we'll go to
I'll just say one last thing. I came in this morning at the airport, and I saw a family who wanted to take a picture with me, a young girl, and I asked her if she was in public school, and she said, yeah, I'm in Catholic school. I said, well, you're going to go back to school this week. And the smile on her face and her parents saying thank you. She misses her teacher, and she misses her classmates, and it's not fair. It's not fair to keep her out. So that's why we're moving fast.
Thanks. We'll go to Catherine.
You say this is necessary because of the irreparable harm and that there's learning loss. So why aren't we hearing a plan of what you're going to do to address that learning loss and that harm?
Well, I think the Premier touched on our plans to address learning loss and improve classroom conditions at length in her comments. We'll be directing school boards to provide us with a significant amount of data so that we can drill down to a classroom level amount of detail and understand exactly how many students are in each and every class, what degree of complexity exists in each and every classroom, so that we can work to improve the conditions that exist in that classroom. We can work with our school boards to look at where best we need to allocate these 3,000 more teachers, more EAs. We'll be changing policy. We discussed the inclusion standards that will be changed and adjusted to provide for the right type of model to ensure that students are able to receive the support that they need, and our teachers are not dealing with undue aggression and violence in the classroom. So these are steps that we're taking beginning today to address these issues. So we'll be taking immediate action to improve these conditions. But as the Premier and my colleagues have noted, students should not be in the middle of this, and they cannot suffer learning loss and disruption, not just to their academics, but to their social well-being and their mental health well-being if this strike is to continue. That's why it's imperative that this bill is passed as quickly as possible.
So you're announcing this ministerial order as well that will reinstate class caps. UCP voted down a private member's bill that would have done this in 2023. The teachers brought this classroom caps and complexities to the bargaining table at the outset, 18 months, and TIBA was told you can't talk about this. So why is it that other provinces were able to reach an agreement on class size and complexity through the bargaining process? Why did we not hear alternatives if you didn't like the formula that was proposed by the teachers?
Sure. Well, I'll, of course, open it up to Minister Horner if he wants to comment further. I can't comment on the conditions in other provinces and the way that they conduct labor negotiations and what deals they're able to reach. What we've heard loud and clear, as the Premier has noted, is that we need maximum flexibility, both from our school boards and from a government standpoint, to be able to ensure that we're meeting the needs of students. And what we're talking about today is about data collection and data reporting. It's not about the imposition of specific classroom limits. We need to get clear data so that we can make more informed decisions, and we'll be absolutely doing that. We've never been opposed to the idea of collecting more data. Gathering this data will help us to ensure that we can provide the right solutions. What the ATA was bringing forward, of course, was a request to have really strict caps mandated into the collective agreement and operate under very strict parameters, which would make things a little difficult.
I would say that we have looked at how other governments in other provinces got to an agreement, and I've had good conversations with Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe after a teacher in my riding said, they've got these specialized learning environments. Maybe you should have a look at that. And what they do is they've got specialist teachers and I believe education assistants who pull kids out of classroom for small group instruction so that they can get the one-on-one that they need. And that allows for them to move from classroom to classroom where the need is the highest. And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at. But that's, again, a kind of approach that is a management decision that requires us to be involved with the school boards on establishing that requires a combination of a trustee buy-in, superintendent buy-in, teacher buy-in, and education assistant buy-in. That's part of the reason why not everything can be determined at the bargaining table, and why these issues and these ideas are going to be explored and implemented with the task force that has all of the relevant parties at it. Do you want to talk about the 18 months and why class size was off?
Well, I guess I would just say, we agree with the challenge in front of us. I think we're building the spaces as fast as we can. 200,000 spaces, $8.6 billion. We're trying to expedite that process in every way we can. We're looking to hire the teachers, hire the staff, hire the EAs to manage this challenge. But we can't agree to impractical, impossible things. 4.4% population growth. We're responsible for a lot of things as the provincial government. The immigration policy of this country wasn't one of them. So we need to approach this in a smart, prudent way at a speed that we can actually achieve. And that's always been our commentary, and that will be our goal.
Thank you. We're going to head to the phones now. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
We have a question from Stephanie Taylor from National Post. Your line is open.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking my question. I would like to get your reaction to Premier Doug Ford telling reporters today that he had showed the anti-tariff ad that has stirred controversy in the U.S., that he showed that ad to the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff before it aired, and whether you believe the Prime Minister bears any responsibility at all for the fact that the U.S. President has shut down trade talks over these advertisements from Ontario.
Well, I think the problem came when the Reagan Foundation weighed in and said that the context of that ad was incomplete. I think that's when it began to get a lot more controversy around it. I'll ask, I'll let the Premier talk about that. But what I will say is that I'm glad he suspended the campaign because I think that, and always have felt like diplomacy is the best avenue. I was very encouraged by Prime Minister Mark Carney's recent visit to the White House, where it looked like they were coming close to a new deal on an energy pipeline that would be a replacement for Keystone, that as a way of leveraging their demand for energy to get a deal on steel and aluminum. I was very supportive of the Prime Minister's efforts in that regard, and I'm sad to see we're back at square zero. So I think that we all just have to be mindful that the U.S. Administration is unpredictable. And I think that the relationship building that the Prime Minister is doing should continue. I wish him well on that. And I hope that very soon we'll be able to get back to where we started so that we can move forward on some agreements.
I want to also follow up on a slightly different question. Next month is the deadline of when you've set that you hope to see the pipeline proposal you plan to advance next spring listed on the Prime Minister's next tranche, as he called it, of nation-building projects. What do you make of the fact that the federal energy minister, when asked about this, continues to call your project hypothetical? And does he have a point, given you're asking the feds to list something when you haven't actually submitted the work for it yet?
Well, I think that we can see from the reaction of certain premiers why it is we have to be the ones to lead this. I mean, if anyone thinks that if a private proponent came forward that they wouldn't be facing some of the same vitriol, like give your head a shake. This is the reason why we've put it on the table. It's because we believe that we can do the work to negotiate with the federal government, whose authority and jurisdiction it is, to address the concerns that they have about emissions, to address the concerns that they have about Indigenous consultation, and for us to be able to get to a deal that will allow for equity ownership of the bands in British Columbia and Alberta, as well as making sure that it's the lowest carbon barrels going through that pipeline. So I would say that the opinion of some premiers is less relevant than the opinion of the Prime Minister, and we're working towards a memorandum of understanding that will address the 9 bad laws that have been impacting our investment climate, support pathways so that we can reduce emissions, as well as get a pipeline to the BC coast, and I remain optimistic.
Thank you, Stephanie. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Our next question is from John Tupper from Harvard Media News. Your line is open.
Good morning. This is to the Premier. The Alberta Teacher Association says that they're tired of seeing kids slip through the cracks, but their strike is forcing every child to slip through the cracks. As Premier, what's your message to Jason Schilling and the ATA on their all-or-nothing negotiation approach?
I hope this marks a reset today, because Minister Nicolaides is very keen to get started on the task force, and it will be more successful with the participation of both the ATA, CUPE, and other staff associations. And so as we're putting that together, getting the data that we need, I would hope that this offers an opportunity to let the teachers know they've been heard. We know complexity is an issue. We know aggression is an issue. We know English language learners are an issue, and we want to work with them to develop targeted approaches to address it with more teachers and more education assistants where they're needed. So I hope that is the spirit with which this is received today. That's the spirit with which it's intended. We look at them as a valued partner, and we want to get back to working on the issues that they care about, we care about, parents care about, and that are in the best interest of students.
And a follow-up on that, and this comes as much from talking to parents in the playgrounds to even just listening to some of my colleagues' questions. It seems that only a few have been asked about the children themselves. Do you feel the Alberta Teachers Association is more interested in playing politics with you, the government, than they are in actually seeing our children advance?
Well, this is the reason this strike can't go on any longer. We're now over 3 weeks out of classroom. They won't be back in classroom until Wednesday. So 3.5 weeks out of classroom. And to hear Minister Nicolaides say that there has been demonstrable learning loss when kids are out of classrooms 10 days, that's what we've got to have in mind. We've got to put that first. The kids went through a lot with their school being disrupted over the last 5 years. We know that it has led to learning loss issues and socialization issues, and making sure that kids are feeling the ability to advance. We're worried about the students who want to go on to university and the potential disruption of their ability to write diploma exams. There's just too much damage that is happening already to the students, and we certainly don't want to see that continue by having this occur any longer. And so that's why we're putting this legislation forward, so that we can end it now.
Thank you. We have time for at least one, maybe two more questions. We're going to go to our next on the phones. Operator, could you put through the next caller, please?
Next is Don Braid from the Calgary Herald. Your line is open.
Hi, Premier, last night, it's my understanding that the heads of just about all the major unions in Alberta were having a Zoom call to talk about general strike action. Now, general strike is such a loose term, but they're talking about serious action if in the event of imposition of, especially of the notwithstanding clause. The teachers themselves are clearly not exactly at the command of their executive, and some units may decide to go out despite this, even though they're risking $500 a day and so forth. We've seen all of this before, but are you concerned because it really is it seems to be a significant reaction, perhaps like nothing we've ever seen before to a government action on a strike. Could you comment on that, please?
Well, I would hope that frontline workers would look at the fairness of this deal. A 12% increase over 4 years, changes to the grid that bring 95% of teachers up to a level that's a 17% increase. It would be implemented as soon as next calendar year on the unified grid. The fact that we're hiring 3,000 more teachers, 1,500 more education assistants, and that the starting salary is $70,000, going up to $119,000. Like, we're locking in on that. That's how strongly we stand by the agreement we negotiated at the table. I've noted that that's not always the case when back to work legislation happens. If you look at some of the renewed offers at Canada Post, that's why we know and feel like this is the right bargaining decision. So I would just hope that people would look at their own personal circumstances and just give an honest assessment of whether they think it's fair. Most of the parents I talk to, they think it's fair. Many of the teachers who've contacted us, they think it's fair. And I think most of all, it's fair to the students who are the ones who are most impacted.
And a follow-up, Don?
What I'm saying is that, the unions feel the way the unions feel, and they find the notwithstanding clause to be an atrocity, frankly. Mm-hmm. And that's the motivation. I mean, I'm sure the public will hear what you're saying about the terms of the deal and what you're doing going forward, but that's the way, that's what's going on, and that's what could happen. Will you comment on it?
Well, I heard what the finance minister said, that no one's in a position of a legal strike. And so each person is going to be fined individually if they walk out illegally. So that's why I'm asking frontline union members to look at our deal and see if it's fair, because I think it is fair. And I would hope that that doesn't occur. As the finance minister has said a couple of times, that this is a unique situation because there are 2 orders of bargaining, which meant that there was the potential, not just for one strike or lockout, but 61 other strikes or lockouts as they went to local bargaining. We want that local bargaining to continue, but we need the stability. And so it's because of that unique hybrid approach that we take in bargaining in this circumstance that I would say that shouldn't be seen by the union movement as a general approach on all labor issues. It's very unique to this one, and I would hope that we can continue on constructively at all of the other tables. We've had great success in over 50% of our collective agreements getting to a negotiated settlement. That is the mandate that the finance minister has given to our bargaining committee, and is the mandate that we're going to continue with.
Thank you. And we have time for one last question. We'll come to Janet here in the room, and then we'll end.
By saying to teachers you can't engage in local bargaining because we're worried you're going to strike because of this deal, isn't that a tacit admission that what you're imposing on them is unacceptable?
That's not what we said. Do you want to talk about how local bargaining is going to proceed?
Yeah, well, the reason that this tool is the tool that we're choosing, even if we had gone to interest arbitration, that wouldn't prevent potential unhappiness from a segment of teachers that then would work at the local level to drive strike action. So that's what we're saying. So I've heard a couple of times it mentioned that, well, the teachers voted against this by 90%. How do you think this works? That's a story that goes on forever. Why would anyone ever accept any offer if all you have to do is say no to get more? This system relies on parties coming to the table to achieve fair and reasonable deals. And I've heard the question about other unions, I would look to UNA, I would look to the APS led by AUPE as signs that we're willing to negotiate and reach negotiated terms.
A question for Minister Nicolaides. Since we like looking at provincial math, if there are more than 2,000 schools and we're adding 3,000 teachers over 3 years and 1,500 EAs, that's not even 1 EA per school, and it's 1 and a bit if it's evenly distributed, which we know it won't be. What I don't hear is any talk of the funding formula that has gotten us into this situation in the first place, like changes to that funding formula. So what would you say to say that is adequate enough to fix the problem, and what to you is the benchmark of success that this problem has been addressed?
Well, I don't agree with the characterization that it's the funding formula that's gotten us to this circumstance. You know, we've seen record population increase. You go back to 2023, it was a record year of population growth, both in terms of interprovincial migration and as well in terms of new Canadians. You go back to 2023, 2022, our school boards were not asking for new schools. The population growth wasn't there. I see some eyebrows.
School boards have been asking for funding since 2016, 2017 for new schools.
If you go back and look at the capital plans, look at the capital plan of Calgary Board of Education in 2022 or 2023. Out of the 10 or 15 projects that they were putting forward over the next 3 years, only 4 of them were for new schools. The rest were for modernizations. If you don't believe me, which it looks like you don't, go and look at the capital plans. And you'll see that our school boards were not asking for a significant number of new schools in the years of 2021, 2022, 2023, because the population growth and the student enrollment growth was not there to support that kind of measure. Of course, the dynamics changed considerably starting in 2023 when our population grew at incredible odds and in an incredible way. And we've responded to that by an $8.6 billion commitment to build and modernize over 130 new schools. We'll be looking at class size data. We'll be looking at levels of complexity. So I don't think this is a challenge that's, as you characterized, solely attributed to funding and to a funding formula. There's been an incredible amount of new students coming from a range of different areas. We've seen a 34% increase in the number of refugee students as well that we've admitted from 2020 to 2024. So our classrooms have become much more complex. and there's no question, we've welcomed many more students into our classrooms, and those are some of the challenges that we need to work on addressing. We've heard loud and clear as well, as it relates to inclusion standards and policies, that we need some significant revision to our approach to inclusion standards. Every teacher that I talk to, every trustee that I talk to, and superintendent that I talk to agrees that we need to make some serious revisions to our policies around inclusion as well. So we'll be undertaking all of that work because we hear the concerns that are being raised by teachers and by parents, and we'll undertake that work to improve our education system.
That's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.